What drives winning? What allows teams to win championships? But not just one championship, teams that win year after year. Follow me on this journey to talk with coaches all across the country to uncover what separates average teams versus champions. Hey, my name is Ryan Romano, and I'm your host here on the Championship Corner podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to this week's episode. I've got the legend, Mr. Coach Kevin Hambly from Stanford University with us. Got a couple national titles under his belt, a lot of wins, a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom. So I'm excited to share this conversation. And as we jumped on, like he said, let's just rock and roll. I don't want to think. I just want to talk and share some knowledge and wisdom. So I'm excited to have you, man. I appreciate you joining me.
Thanks. Legend's a little big. I think it's a little aggressive, but I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to chatting. And always like talking about these kind of things. So
yeah,
I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, so I obviously, however we define success, like you've been able to achieve your own level of success, like as a coach, and I believe that you know success leaves tracks. And that you've obviously been able to find like key ingredients, key principles that allow you to win games, develop athletes, both I'm assuming as like people and as well on and off the court and, post college as well. So for you, what would have in all your years of coaching, what are some of those key ingredients, key principles that allow you to continue to just keep performing at a high level?
Yeah, I don't think it's all that complicated. It's like develop real meaningful relationships with the athletes. Let's put the time in, and don't fake it. Be present when you're there and like with them as human beings. Have a plan, like be very structured, be organized with the team. Know what you want to accomplish every single day. Know what you want to accomplish in a month. Know what you want to accomplish in this season. Give yourself some grace if you're not getting there. Give the athletes some grace if they're not getting there, but always push towards that. And then create an environment in the gym where players can be themselves, can be comfortable to make the mistakes necessary to grow. It's a good learning environment to me is one where they can make errors and not feel like they're being judged, but that they're making the errors because they have great intention and they're giving great effort and they want to be great. And so you allow them that space and stay consistent with that.
Yeah, so I'm 100% with you too. I firmly believe like step one is like care and connection and like building that relationship because obviously, you get it is yes, you are in the sports world, but really you're in kind of the relationship world. And it is having those relationships because ultimately that's what wants them to be great, right? Like because they have all those things, the freedom, the autonomy to make those. So what are some of those things in like as new players come in and like as the time 2, 3, 4 years that they spend with you, how do you continue to grow and develop those relationships with the athletes?
Yeah. Well, if I could say one thing, more importantly to me than just like, this is how we win. If we're not developing the relationships, what the hell are we doing this for? Like at the end of the day, we won a couple titles, as you mentioned, as you're introducing me. You know how much my life's changed? Not at all. Like nothing's changed. The next day, nothing changed. That night when you win, I'm still worried about next season. I'm still worried about the recruit. I'm still worried about how do I take care of, my staff and, those kind of things. So nothing changes. How have I developed relationships? I think the most important thing is that I am always me. I'm not trying to be something or be someone. I'm always going to be myself. I'm very, very honest. I was going to say incredibly honest, but I don't know what that means. I am brutally honest is the right word, but not in a brutal way. Like I just tell what I see to be the truth.
Yeah.
But I think most importantly, I put time in. I try to, I don't force the athletes to meet with me once every 2 weeks, but I open the door for that. And most of them do. And, their freshman year, it's very awkward for them. It's never awkward for me, but they're not used to talking to an adult and just having a conversation for 45 minutes and talk. I mean, besides their parents, but especially the coach, especially not some old man like I am, gray hair, just sitting there, just talking about stuff and talking through things. They're not used to that. And so I think, but by their junior, senior year, we feel like old friends. I wouldn't say I am their friends, but that's how we communicate. It's just like we can speak truth and we can talk about whatever. And there's a high level of trust because I haven't betrayed that and I've been consistent. And in those meetings, I've heard everything from, that I think you're doing a terrible job, Kevin, to I can't stand this assistant coach, to I've had this unfortunate thing happen to me. I've had this thing happen in my life, or I have this issue, or, it's all over the place. I really feel like I've heard all of it. And there's a new thing that pops up. It's like, okay, that's new. That's something I haven't heard before. But I try to get a place of trust, because, if athletes are trusting you, then that's when you can make the most progress. And that's when they feel the safest. And that's when they develop into the people that we want them to be.
Yeah. I will have to say have you always been that way in terms of just that brutal honesty, like tell it like it is? Because I think back to even when I like cold emailed, reached out to you asking about like process and framework. And I was like, could your athletes? And you're like, well, that's just dumb. Like, that's just a waste of time. And it's like, I respect that. Like, because that's how, like, I want people to be like, because it makes me take a step back, right? It's like, well,
Yeah.
like, is that
Sorry.
like, is what I'm teaching? No. Like, because I believe too is like, if we're going to grow, it's like somebody has to challenge us on like what we perceive to be the truth, right? Because I
Yeah.
believe that it's also going to, if I think it's the right way, then it's going to like hardcore make me really truly believe what I believe to be true, or it makes me take a step back and be like, that's old. Like, it doesn't work anymore. Like,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
got to be a
Yeah.
new, a better way. So it's like, has that kind of just always been your personality?
Then the house I grew up in was very honest and
Yeah.
open. My relationship with my wife is very honest and open. My relationship with my kids is that way. I'm used to operating that way. I think I don't think I said that was dumb. That's not what I said too. But I
I
said that's
probably
not how I want to spend
exaggerated.
something about, like, I don't want to spend my time on that. That doesn't seem like a good use of time.
Right.
And because efficiency and time is important. But I think, yeah, I think brutal honest, like being brutally honest. I don't like that term because it sounds like it's an attack. It's not an attack. It is the truth that I have. I speak my
Yes.
truth and I share my opinions and what I actually believe they are. I think two things on that. One is I also want that from the athletes, and they have a
Mm.
different truth, and I want to hear that, and I need to be empathetic to their truth, and I need to listen. And I think those two things are very important. One of the hardest things as a coach, and the thing that, like, I think especially when I was a young coach was incredibly hard, was being honest with yourself
Oh,
about how you're doing and
yeah.
not justifying things. And so, like, the self-reflection, the self-evaluation, the team reflection, the team evaluation, being honest there, I think that's where I've made the most gains, is like incredibly honest about that now, and like look at things and don't justify things, and just try to like lean into what I actually know the truth to be that I don't want to admit to myself.
Yeah, one of my coaches mentors now, it's funny that you say that, because over the last like couple months, that's been one of the biggest things he harps on, is like we get so caught up in lying to ourselves. Like, we like something as
Yeah.
simple as is, if you say you're going to get up at 5 a.m. and you wait till 5:30, like essentially that was a lie to yourself. Like, you said you were going to do something and you didn't do it. So he's like, be mindful of like all those small meaningless lies, because then they come into just a habit and a ritual that becomes part of your personality, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I think that's true in life, and like when you're cruising around and doing all that, but you're really doing your team a disservice. If we're talking in the coaching world, you're doing your team an incredible disservice if you're not being honest about it. Because then you end up lying. If you're not being honest yourself about how you're doing, or how the
Yeah.
team's doing, or how we're performing, then you're never going to maximize what the talent the team has, because
Yeah.
you're just lying to yourself the whole time. And then you're operating on hope. You're not operating on truth, and you're not operating in a way that just leads to success.
Yeah. So with so many, like you mentioned the word like environment too, and obviously that is a huge part of anything, whether that's individual success in your own life or, in the athletic world. How do you, with so many personalities, like how do you create that environment to where they're all after one mission, right? Like, because I think that that's really what separates probably the good from the great, the average to the elite, is that collective cohesiveness of like, no, this is our mission, and like we're all in with that.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing you have to do is that you have to get them to share what that mission is. Like, they can't come do my mission. Like, we have to create a mission together.
Yeah.
We have to create what our goals are together. We have to create, what the vision of what we want this to be, and the ways that we want to do it. And so, the first part of that is that we need to talk about it. We need to get into the space and like talk about what is that mission, and what do you guys want out of this season, and let's see if we can compromise or whatever, come to a place where we all believe that, and actually
Yeah.
believe it's possible of that. And then after that, it really is just about, um, evaluating the behaviors, paying attention to the interactions, paying attention to the individual behaviors and the behaviors of the group and the work ethic and all that, and hold them accountable to what that vision is. We're fortunate, I think, it's the winningest program in volleyball, right? So we have won the most titles. So every kid that we recruit is coming here with the assumption that they need to try to win a national championship. Whether we say it or not, that's not it is like a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
When we talk about goals, that's it. And
Yeah.
really, a lot of times that's it for us. It's just that, but how do we do that? Like things in the community, being accessible, like all those things are like we're filled in. Like the Pac-12 title, we barely talk about that.
Interesting. Why is that? Just out of curiosity. Because I feel like a lot of teams, it's like those are the two generic answers. What's your mission this year? We want to be conference champs. We want to be national champs. I feel like everybody kind of ventures down that road. What's kind of your philosophy with that?
It's just that's not the great enough vision. Like that'll take care of itself if we're shooting for this. And then you know what? If we don't win the Pac-12 title and win the national title, who cares?
Yeah. I'm with you.
Yeah, no, I mean, like the national titles really, that's kind of a Stanford thing. We've won the most, this university's won the most titles. And I think it's just part of being here, So are we excited when we have it? Yes. Do they like putting the hats on? Certainly. Like
For
they
sure.
like putting the t-shirts on and taking the photo with the banner and all that stuff. We've been fortunate. We've done that 4 times in our 6 years and they've all been very excited about that. But that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about the national title because they understand that that's where you're really judged. And most of the kids come here and they want to be judged. And so we have those conversations that lay that out. And then I just, going back to your question, is just how do you keep people there? Then I just talk to them about when I notice that behaviors aren't helping us achieve that goal, aren't helping us achieve that vision, aren't helping us achieve that mission, I point it out and we talk about it. And I think you can do that without yelling or screaming or raising your voice.
Mm-hmm.
Even just have conversations like this, whether it's in a individual meeting, whether it's right on the court, whether it's I bring the group together and we have a conversation. Just going to hold them accountable. And I think to me that is where I am relentless. That's like where that's the place where I'm relentless, is holding them accountable to what they're saying and what they believe. But I do it in a way that's like we're talking right now. I'm not like screaming and yelling at them. I'm just doing it like this. So I think people come by and they think that we're not intense. There's an incredible level of intensity in our gym, but it doesn't. Intensity is not yelling and screaming. It's about intention. Like in intensity is intention. It's about the intention that we operate. And I got to hold them to that intention. And with intention comes effort. And that's the way that I kind of manage it.
So I love this because in essence, your mission, your dream outcome for every season is basically a given as the new year begins, i.e.
Basically, I would say like the COVID years, it wasn't. It's like, man, let's just get on the floor and see if we can get better. Because we had such a rough time. Like we couldn't even train 6-for-6. So I don't know how you get better at volleyball in your gym when you're not playing volleyball. We're doing like little drills that, to be honest, like a lot of science would say are a waste of time. Not a waste of time. Not the best use of your time.
Right.
But it was all we had. So we would do that. So, but I would say that's the case. Now, if a team came and said they don't believe that they can, then we would get into that. So I don't want to say like that's every year, but it has been that every year we've been here, it's like, we got to win the title. Like that's what we're here for. So I want to hold them accountable to all that.
So then I guess underneath that becomes, do you really focus on like habits and rituals? Because it's like you have the dream outcome and it's like, okay, we all know that, but like here are the core habits, rituals that we need to focus on day in and day out. It sounds like you kind of touched on those a little bit. It's obviously
more the habits and the behaviors. I would say the rituals, everyone, that stuff we let individualize. I think sometimes that gets hokey. Sometimes that people can be, they are really sharp kids here, and if we bring something to them and I've said that, I've brought some people in to talk to them about some things and it's not resonating. I'm like, hey, I'm sorry I wasted your time. Again, that honesty place. Like I thought this might be cool. It wasn't. We're about to do this little thing where we're going to do some competition behavioral kind of evaluation thing. It's kind of like a disc assessment, but it's for competition. We're going to do that. And it could very well be a waste of time. And if it is, I'm going to say, hey, I'm sorry we spent an hour on this, this isn't resonating with us. If it works out great, then I won't say anything. We'll just be like, glad it worked out. But I think like all that stuff, I just want to make sure that anything we're doing, like when you asked me about that email, that it's worth our time and it makes sense. It's efficient. It's the best use of our time. So like, I think, and if it's not, then I'm sorry for it, and I feel bad about it.
Um, so going back to personalities too, obviously a big piece of the puzzle are your assistants as well. And so
Yeah.
when you're choosing staff, how do you determine like what those, because obviously you know your personality and this is my demeanor, this is how I speak my truth, this is how I hold myself and expect everybody else to hold themselves around me. What goes into, I guess, A, too, have you had the same staff all the time? And B, if not, like how do you go into like determining, you know, who's the right fit for your program?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, you want talented assistants. I've had turnover. I had some assistants for a while, and I've had other ones turnover. Where we are now, it's a tough place to live from a financial aspect. So there's been some turnover.
Yeah.
I think the thing that when hiring assistants is first and foremost, they need to be great people, and they need to be bought into like the way that we operate our culture. Like that's the first thing that matters. And then certainly they need to have talent, but I don't look at the staff like I want to hire this person, I want to hire this person, I want to hire this person. I want to hire the right person to fit the whole group to make sure that all of our spots are kind of covered.
Yeah.
You need recruiting, you need organization, you need training, you need someone that's going to be on top of like keeping things moving. You need, like, there's things that you need in your program, and not everyone has those strengths, and not all of my assistants have all those strengths. In fact, if two people have the same strengths, usually that makes it harder. So it's more like filling in to make sure that we feel like we have everything. And then the big part of it is just setting expectations for the level of work that we want to do and how hard we want
Hmm.
to go, and how we want to operate day to day, and then hold them accountable to those behaviors, like we're holding them accountable to the rest of the players and everyone around the program to those behaviors. I think the best, when things are at their best, from the players to the coaching staff to the athletic trainer to the athletic director to the performance director, they all feel like they're partners in this, and they all feel invested,
Yeah.
and we're all operating with the same behaviors when they're around the program. And um, I feel like that's a lot of work to get there. Like I got to be the hub of all that and make it happen. It's just expectations and a lot about holding accountable behaviors like we do the athletes.
Yeah. I think
That is it.
too, um, I once heard, I think I heard it from a business perspective, but if it was like you and your partner, are basically the same people, then like one of you are unnecessary. And I think that's essentially what it's saying. If you do if two people are doing the exact same job, it's like kind of what's the point, right? Like, as you talk
Right.
about efficiency, it's like somebody's taking a whole job.
Right. Well, and if I had another me, like if I had a little mini me,
Yeah.
first off, I'd probably hate that person. It'd be terrible. But also, like, I think it wouldn't make sense. It just wouldn't make
Right.
sense. Or if I had like clones of assistants that I've really liked, it doesn't make sense. It's about putting it all together. So I hire to that, certainly.
Yeah, it does. I know you mentioned your athletes being very sharp academically. Does that make it difficult to recruit? Obviously, Stanford academics is at a very high standard. Um, or have you just been able to like, hey, this is what it is, and I know what I need to go out and find and get, and you're just very successful at doing that?
No, it is not hard to get athletes interested.
Yeah.
It's hard to get athletes to commit to the process of getting into school because we can't guarantee admission. Almost every other school besides the Ivies, from what I
Yeah.
understand, maybe Northwestern, maybe some schools like Vanderbilt, like now has a volleyball program. Like there's probably a couple others. But I had an Ivy League head coach become my assistant, and she said none of the Ivies are like Stanford. Like it's the hardest to get into.
Oh wow.
So here we're recruiting the top. We need to recruit the top players in the country, and then we need to convince them, or they need to be convinced that they can do this academically, which means about rigor. It's and great grades.
Yeah.
You have to get A's, more A's than B's, and you have to take on an incredibly difficult course load. I think our average is like 6 to 8 AP courses before they come. So that's not every athlete is willing to do that. But
Yeah.
the ones that do and go through the process are pretty special people, and they are achievers, and
Yeah.
they're hard workers, and they're competitive because they're competing with their classmates, and like it creates this great culture of the kids that are willing to take it on, that they are pretty special, and they're people you want to be around, and they're people you want on your team, and it removes all the knuckleheads. So
Well, I was going to say, it's almost like a natural weed out process.
it's 100% a natural weed out process, but it's just, I mean, if we have 4 scholarships, there may only be 6 players that we're recruiting for those.
Yeah.
And so we got to hope that we get 4 of those,
How would you mentioned the word culture too, and obviously that's a big one for me, like in these conversations, and then B, helping, some coaches and programs understand like what real culture is, because I feel like it's one of those buzzwords, right? Confidence, leadership, culture,
Yeah.
attitude. It's like, but they don't mean anything until it like has whatever it means to you is. And I feel like I see a lot of programs fall into like culture traps. The most obvious one I feel like is people try to copy and paste, right? They see a
Yeah.
successful culture from somebody else and they're like, oh, we'll just take that and implement that program. Like, yeah, but it may work, but chances are it's probably not, because it probably doesn't match your personality. So my question would be, is kind of like, how would you define your culture? How do you, like, when you're recruiting or looking for a new staff member, how do you language that?
Yeah. Well, I would say, if I can just touch on something you said, that was like right on, is like copy and paste other people's culture. That certainly doesn't work. I would also say that copying and pasting the culture from the year before doesn't work. So like, how would I define my culture? My culture is, uh, there's some principles that I believe in, like honesty. Obviously, we've talked about that. Hard
Yeah.
work, integrity, um, individualism, like take like people being themselves. I mean, we can go like that, but I would say, like when I got hired at Stanford, they said, "What is your culture?" And I said, "Well, that's a strange question, because culture isn't just me. I have these behaviors and these principles that I want to live up to, like I want my groups to live up to. But the culture is about all of us. We're all part of this culture. So the culture is shaped by the individuals, the culture, how we communicate, how we work, how we, who we want to spend our time with, how we need to spend our time, like who our friends are in that, who the social leaders are on that, who the competitive leaders are, who the task leaders are. Like all those things shift and change every single year. And so the culture is defined by the people that are in it. It's not defined by me. I just hold them accountable to the behaviors that lead to the expectations that we have for the program. And that's it, but the culture is constantly in flux, constantly shaping. Each season it changes in the spring and summer, or winter and spring, and then it changes again when we add the freshmen. It's always evolving. And if we don't evolve with it, if we try to this is harder for athletes than coaches, I think, try to just replicate the culture we had the year before. We had a great culture last year. If we try to replicate that this year, it won't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it has to constantly be evolving with the people.
How do you get them to be, just based off of this conversation, so open and honest with you? Because I've been around programs where if you say, hey, what are the standards that we want to set? What are the expectations that we want to have? It's like a kid when a parent asks them, hey, what are your goals? Their immediate brain goes to, it's like, okay, what does my mom or dad want me to set out
Yeah.
as my goal? Or in this case, it's when coaches start asking, it's like, oh, what is the coach, like, what do they want to hear versus like, what do I genuinely believe should be these standards and expectations? So how do you pull that out of somebody?
Yeah. I think, man, I probably have too much confidence on my emotional quotient. Like I probably you know what I mean? So like if someone's full of shit, like sorry if I'm not supposed to say on this thing,
No,
but
no,
just,
no, 100%.
okay. Okay. Yeah,
I'm
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 sorry.
the worst.
Okay.
So
Okay. I won't apologize for that then. If someone's full of shit, then I don't like, and I think they are, we just call it out. Like, hey, I
yeah,
don't really believe this. Like you could tell, especially
yeah,
if we've known these kids even before they get here for a few years. We're talking to them, we're having conversations. We see them at their best. We see them when they're struggling. We know when they're hiding stuff. Like I've said that to a lot of players, like, oh, don't just say that because we want to hear it. I think you just
yeah,
got to call that out and be aware of it. And don't just like hope that you hear what you want to hear.
yeah.
Also, is this real? Like, is this real? So explain it back to me. What does this mean then? And if you think they're full of shit, no, don't just call them out and be like, okay, what does that mean to you? And then
Mm-hmm.
are you really willing to take that on? Because you haven't shown anything that tells me you're willing to take that on. You know what I mean? Like, or there's none of your behaviors are saying that you want to do this. And so like, it's just, I don't think there's any like magic pill. I think it's more like
Right.
you just get in the conversations, you pay attention, I evaluate every conversation, I evaluate every like thing, and pay attention to how people's body language is and how they're responding. And do I miss? Certainly. Do I
For
get fooled?
sure.
Certainly. But I still am trying hard to make sure that they actually are saying what they mean. And what's been cool is that usually by their junior, senior year, I'm not worried about that anymore. It's
Hmm.
when they're young that I'm worried about, because they know that we'd rather hear the truth.
Yeah.
If there's the truth, we can work with that. If you don't
Yeah.
believe that we can do what we say we can do, let's talk about that. That's great. Then let's dig into that. Why? What can we do? Should we change what we want to go? Do we not believe in that? Let's talk about that, and just be willing to have those conversations in a way that doesn't have judgment. So I think how you respond as a coach to those things, whether it's harsh or whether it's like being a good ear and like listening, and then being open to the conversations about it, and like have real conversations without judgment. I think those two things are incredibly important. The lack of judgment is incredibly important, I think, in all of this.
Yeah.
I know I just said like you're full of shit, but that's because you're lying to yourself and lying to me. That's not like, I don't think you're full of shit as a human being. I think you're afraid. I think there's fear in there somewhere. Let's dig into that fear. What are you afraid of?
Yeah. I feel like the majority of them, from the ones I've been around, is like a huge fear, like a fear of being enough. Like, am I going to say this? Like, I have to feel enough, because if I feel enough, then I feel loved. Right. And if I
Yeah.
don't feel enough, then I
Ooh.
don't feel loved. And then that really strikes me at my core, because ultimately that's one of like our basic needs. Like when we're an infant, right? When first born, like we want that body touch, we want that love, we want that connection in a different way. It's the same whether it's your
And
own personal kids or it's your coaching kids.
you're striking a nerve. I like, with me, one of the things that I think is really important in coaching and as a coach is the identity piece. Like you're talking about, like if I'm successful, I feel loved. Like if I heard a player say that, or you're saying that, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like you are so much more than a volleyball player.
Yes.
There's a really high level first team All-American who was on the stand, and she's doing her speeches like I am volleyball, like I am that. And my two players that were also All-Americans were like, Kevin, you would kill us if we said that. I was like, yes, 100% would be like, what are you talking about? No, this is what you do. This is not who you are. You should
Yes.
feel loved all the time, regardless of how you side out or how you set or how you pass or how much success you have. Like, I love you despite those things. Your parents love you despite. Don't couple those things. Don't couple who you are as a student. Don't couple who you are in a relationship. Don't couple yourself as a mom or a dad or whatever. Like those things, those are things that are part of your life, but they are not who you are. Who you are at the core is way more important. And so we spend a lot of time uncoupling that, because I do agree. Like, I think one of the things that's a challenge for a lot of the athletes, I would say this is like to truly be judged, like to put yourself out there and see if you're good enough, like really do that. It's easier to protect yourself. It's easier to like, oh, I didn't go as hard as I could in this match. I didn't go for it at this match point because I was afraid. Because if I did, maybe I'm actually not good enough. And I think if you can't uncouple that identity piece, I think two things you can't do is you can't truly learn, because every
Yeah.
mistake you make, every error you make that you have to make in order to grow, you're not going to make, because then you all of a sudden I'm bad, and you can't be judged. Like you can't put yourself out there to be judged and like truly see if you're good enough. And what's wrong if you're not? What's wrong if you're not?
Yeah.
Nothing. What at the
Yeah.
end of the day, what? You weren't as good a volleyball player as like some douche said on some board, or like you know what I mean? Excuse my language, but like what does
No,
that matter? What does that matter? Like it's like what matters is that you are a good human being and you treat people well and you are a good citizen. And this other stuff is just what you do. So let's not make it bigger than what it needs to be.
yeah.
Just enjoy it. If you enjoy it, it'll be better. So
One of the first
like I
questions.
said, you get over. Like I think this is an incredibly important thing, especially in the day and age of the social media and the pressures and all these people that have all these opinions that are firing off DMs and all these kids' Twitters and Instagrams and whatever. Like it's just more important than ever. And I think it's more important for coaches than ever either, because they're listening to all the same stuff, and the people that their identities coupled in. Like if I'm a coach, like someone says, I don't even like when people say, "Hey coach," I'm like, no, okay, hey administrator, hey trainer. Like, do you want to, like, that's my job. I am
Yeah.
Kevin. This
Yes.
is not who I am. I
It's
think
interesting you say that. I used to tell people all the time, don't call me coach. I'm just Ryan. Like, we're not different. We're one and the same.
Yeah, I would say like don't walk around telling me what my job is. I know what my job is. Just not, I'm Kevin. Like and this is who I am. Like don't try to couple those things for me. So anyway.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because that is like That literally is my entire mission when from a 30,000 foot view is like the identity piece. Is like I never had it as I was not some high level performing athlete by any means, but I was a college wrestler, but like I didn't do anything. And when I boiled it down to it, is like that was the missing piece. Is like I just had no concept of like who I was
Yeah.
beyond like the sport that I did. And so it's like that's kind of like my set out mission to have these conversations to help coaches and everybody is even just listeners, right? It's like, oh, even if it is an athlete to help them understand. Because
I,
one of the first
yeah.
questions I always ask them too is like, are you addicted to a life that you don't love? And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, what's the number one emotion you feel on a day-to-day basis? And most college age kids will usually say stress, worry, anxiety, fear, one of those things. And I'm like, if that's what you feel the majority of your day, is that a life that you're loving to live right now? And I was like, it doesn't have to be that you never feel those things. It's like, for now, we just got to tip the scale 51%, whatever that emotion that you want to feel, joy, love, connection, whatever that is. So I'm
Yeah.
on board with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I mean, I think I hit it enough, but I'll talk about it every camp at some point, talk about it with every one of my athletes, talk about it with my kids, my children. I think it's really, really important.
So do you touch on that aspect of it even just from the moment you start recruiting? It's like, hey, because I feel like that's so oh shit, I hear it so much. We're going to develop these young men and young women into something beyond an athlete. But like so many people don't live it. Like so many people
Yeah.
don't live it.
I don't know that I spend that much time talking about it. I just spend time like helping the athletes kind of get there,
Yeah.
like, or trying to, or I mean, there's some athletes that like literally every one of my conversations, because they were such high profile athletes and what everywhere was like, hey, you're more than this, you're more than this, you're more than this. And that was like, because it's so easy for them to just lean into that and feel like they are just this, they are the personality that's on the court, and not, and that becomes a product. It becomes their like the superhero that everyone's like all the
Yeah.
little kids are looking at, or the
Yeah.
now the NIL people want to give money to, and it's like, man, this we've got to keep this separate. So
Yeah.
if you ask any one of my athletes about like, and you just mentioned the word identity, they probably roll their eyes like, come on. If you ask
Oh,
my kids, if you ask
oh
my
fuck,
kids,
not that word again.
yeah, if you ask my kids, 100% they would say that.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll talk about this because the identity piece. I have a transgender son.
Okay.
So you want to talk about identity and trying to sort all that stuff out,
Yeah.
like and he is not in his mind. Like I'm reluctant to say that. The only reason I say it is because we talk about you are not a transgender kid. You're Joseph. You are who you are. Like what your sexuality is, how you identify, like those kind of things. I know it's the same word, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
Like you are who you are. So I mean, navigating all that stuff is really it's complicated. It's really hard, and there's more pressures to be something as opposed to being yourself. And so
100%.
I think it's so important. So yeah, I hammer it all the time.
So how did that become like a mission for you? The identity
Mm,
piece of it. Obviously, everybody gets into coaching at some level. They want to win, right? They want to be successful, but
yeah,
there is something bigger. And like I
you
said,
said winning and successful. Like like I think we had some success and not won as much as we wanted to. So like I think why am I in that? Because I'm trying to be successful, and successful means developing people, developing leaderships, developing um,
I guess let me
meaningful.
reframe. How did the identity piece become such a big?
Yeah, just evaluating, paying attention, like, and then doing some research on it. Like,
Yeah.
why are these kids like these kids are struggling with it? Like, just I can't remember. Like some I read some article on it. Like I don't know, 2013, and then just started looking at more stuff just about how
Yeah.
important that is and how much harder it's getting, and then just constantly thinking about it. I don't know. Like there was no like epiphany.
Defining moment. Yeah.
It was more like I think a lot of things like that. Oh, I recognize this. I see this as a problem. How big a problem is this? How can I help this? And then when you start looking at it, you start digging into it. You start to see it more and more and more. And I feel like because of the NIL, because of the social media stuff, like it's just become obvious, more obvious and
Yeah.
more obvious and more obvious because of the outside pressures that are trying so hard to like force these kids to be a product as opposed to be a human being. And to be honest, even I push back on administration. We have things like that on campus, like, hey, how do you sell your product? And it's like, what are you guys doing? Like, what are you doing here? So I have to I feel like I do a lot on the back end of that. And I know what they're doing. What they're doing is they're trying to help these kids make some money and all that stuff.
Right.
But can we frame it in a different way?
Yeah.
Can we,
And a lot of it too is we're so, especially kids nowadays, we're so caught up in the short-term game, right? It's so difficult for them to see the long-term game, because when you start to ask questions like, who are you beyond like being an athlete? We're like, well, that doesn't matter right now. I'm like, but it does.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That may be where my players would never say that to me, because we talked about it too much.
Yeah.
They would never say that. They would be like, I'm trying to sort it out. Because it's hard right now.
I'm still diving into that question.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't have much more. I don't know if I have much more to offer on it, except for that because it's so individual based, and it's much more about trying to help. For me, it's trying to help kids navigate it, and then make sure that I don't get caught up in it either. Because I think I see coaches, once you have some success, they try to make you a product as well.
Are they pretty open to having those conversations too?
Especially once we get to know each other, there's a level of trust. Yeah. They're pretty open to every conversation, and I have to be open to other conversations. I mean, if I'm open to whatever conversation, they're open to whatever conversation. So
I like that. Yeah. Last question.
Okay.
If you could give one piece of advice, whether that's to a coach, to an athlete, really even to a parent, that they could walk away with, what would your golden nugget be?
Man, that's the broad group to talk to.
Or you can go one. You can just go.
Well, yeah.
Because obviously you deal with.
This is going to be kind of lame, but it fits all this stuff that we're talking about. So that's a really good way to preface my golden nugget. Is it's going to be kind of lame, but don't make any of this sports and stuff bigger than it is.
Yeah.
It's just sports. And the reason our identity gets wrapped up into it, the reason that kids feel stressed out, the reason is because everyone's just making it bigger than it is.
Yeah.
And I understand the pressures. We have pressure on us. I understand that. And if I make it bigger than it is, I'm going to do things outside of who I am. And I see parents I tell parents this all the time, we're in the middle of this match, and I have a daughter that's playing volleyball, right? So I got to be a dad, and I'm with the parents, and I'm doing the claps, and they give me shit if I don't do the cheers. So I do the cheers. My wife is hitting me if I'm doing that. So I'm in there, she's 14 and under, and we're doing this stuff. And the parents are oh, this is such a big match. It's such a big moment. And they're getting all anxious and yelling and stuff and getting on their kids. And I'm like, you know what? Just stop for a second. Do you think this random match on a Saturday, that's the second match of the pool, these kids are going to remember at all? I don't remember those matches. I didn't remember them 3 days later. But what they will remember is you being an asshole.
Yeah.
To them, or saying these things that you don't actually mean, because you're your identity is wrapped up in this kid, or you think this is so important, or you're so worried about your kid getting recruited, you're so worried about all these things, or you're so just don't make it big. Just it's sport. Enjoy that it's sport. It's a great metaphor for life. It's a great opportunity to learn. There's all these things that we can learn from it. It's obviously important enough on campus that they put money into it. But even then, if we get caught up in it too much,
yeah, I love that too. And making it, especially at that age, making it about them and not you as a parent, right?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most. Have you read the book Mindset by Carol Dweck?
Oh yeah.
So the most profound statement.
Carol Dweck's here, she's
as I said it, I was like, I'm pretty sure she's out there.
Well, we read it as a team, and I emailed her, and we talked about what our definition of learning growth mindset.
Yeah. I think she mentioned one thing in there, and it was how you language things to kids. And it was the most profound statement to me. It was be careful of saying I'm proud of you versus you should be proud of yourself, because it's the whole subconscious of if I'm a parent and I say, oh, I'm so proud of you, subconsciously they could be taking that as I'm doing this for you as a parent. I was like, holy shit, that's powerful. That's scary.
Yeah. I mean, even with my team, they're what are you proud of? I get reporters asking me all the time, what are you proud of with this team? And I'm like, man, that's why, I'm not proud. That seems I'm uncomfortable with that. Like, I'm
Yeah.
uncomfortable with you asking the question because that seems like they're trying to please me. Like,
Uh-huh.
I'm here in service for them. I am honored to be a part of this group that is doing these things. Like, that's what I always respond. Like, I'm not comfortable with that word proud. Like, that sounds like they're just trying to serve me. They're not trying to
Yeah.
serve me, nor is my child trying to serve me. It's her life. I'm just trying to provide everything, every opportunity I can for her to be the best player, the best musician, the best whatever they want to be. But I'm not, they don't need to make me proud. Like, they need to live their life. Like,
Hmm.
I'm honored to be in their lives. And
Yeah.
I think I agree with you on that. That's a dangerous, very dangerous statement.
And I see it a lot, like, especially like on social media, right? Like parents like, "Oh my God, I'm so proud of da 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 da." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh man, It's a lot
Yeah.
of like unintended damage."
I agree. I'm cringing a lot. I'm like at a lot of stuff. So I'm hoping that we can mitigate the damage. So anyway,
Yeah. Well, I love it,
maybe
man.
it wasn't totally lame. Maybe that wasn't totally lame, but just a little bit lame. But it seems like
No,
a
that was
topic.
good. I like it.
Okay.
I like it.
Okay.
I like this conversation. I love hearing that there are people like you out there that are really honing in on the identity piece, because that's exactly literally what happened is I was one of those, and so I literally went out and paid a research company to come back and like, is this real or was this just me? Was I just an outlier? And it was like, no, these kids are going through it. So I was like, oh
Yeah,
shit, like we got to get on a mission. And so it's awesome to hear that there are people out there living it, because I I do believe that coaches get into the game with that mission, but like you said, is once they start to have success or lack of success, they become obsessed one way or the other, and so the ultimate mission gets lost and forgotten very
I
easily.
would agree. I agree. Ryan, keep fighting the good fight on that, man. It's a tough one. You got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, we have a lot of work to
Yeah, true.
do.
Yeah, I'm in it. I'm in it. We do. Yeah.
Well, cool. I appreciate it. As always, my mission here is to be able to just take one thing away, hopefully something that you can implement or just add into your life. You don't have to remember all the conversation, but one powerful piece to go out and live it and keep going out and crushing it. Until next time, love you guys. Talk to you soon.